So a lot of people talk about making money in real estate, but I think that they misunderstand that that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So let's unpack how people make money in real estate and how to really plan for long-term wealth, not to be rich. Let's go. So a lot of people get into real estate by either taking a course online from a guru or possibly studying for the real estate exam, something that I advocate for a lot. But one of the things people do is they get into it trying to understand the basics of how to make money, but they don't understand how that basic, quick making money doesn't necessarily equate to long-term wealth. So let's unpack a little bit about how to do that. One of the most prevalent strategies you have now on social media is something called Airbnb arbitrage. If you've watched my videos for any length of time, you know that I am not a fan of Airbnb arbitrage, not the least of which is because most rental agreements prohibit subleasing, and there's also city and state and county ordinances which make it problematic. But if you're doing that, what you're really doing is you're making the difference between what you're paying somebody else and the extra income for yourself. That is not a significant amount of income, and you don't own any real estate, which means you don't have any equity, upside, appreciation, and value. So really what you're talking about is small, subtle increases in your income over time, smaller than actually owning the property. And while some great proponents of the strategy will tell you they can make a lot of money every single month, I'll tell you that that's also seasonal, there's limits, and there's also all sorts of caveats around it. The other way people are making money right now that's very, very prevalent is flipping. Flipping real estate, buying a piece of real estate as an equity play, usually using a hard money loan or some kind of cash that you may have available to you to buy a property, rehab it, and then turn it around and then sell it to somebody else for a profit incrementally. That is really a scale game. You can make 20,000 here, 40,000 here, but in order to really make money, you do a lot of them. And that particular business tends to get really, really, really flooded when economies get really, really, really frothy like the one that we're in. Particularly with this economy, because there is such a shortage of supply, where in a normalized economy, you've got 6 months of supply on the market versus the 2.6 months that we have currently. That means that there's such a limited supply that somebody buying an old house and renovating it will actually have a huge amount of buyers out there. The problem with flipping is as inventory changes and values start to go down, that incremental profit margin starts to change dramatically. So some flippers will tell people in real estate, well, go into Lux properties, which means you need a bigger loan for bigger money and bigger returns. And yeah, while you can generally make 100,000 versus, just 10 or 20,000, depending on what market you're in, there's also increased risk with having those Lux properties. So don't buy into the stigma that these things are long-term wealth strategies. Very, very, very few people can actually do this and get wealthy. You'll find that long-term wealth has to do with tertiary things, and it's totally fine to start there. It's also equally as fine to start as being a realtor. Getting into your market, selling a property, making a $20,000 commission. I was telling some friends earlier today that I'm closing a property that's going to go in escrow, I think, Friday. I start closing escrow on Friday. That's a $1,020,000 property. It's approximately a $20,000 commission to me for doing relatively little work compared to many, many other things that people are doing. That $20,000 is a one-time event, but if I use that with some other funds and I buy a piece of real estate, for example, in the Midwest, I put $40,000 down and I get $500 to $800 a month in cash flow. That cash flow over time combined with that equity appreciation potential is really kind of the start line of how you actually build wealth and how you build things. You need to own real estate long term. And people will always argue against that, saying, I don't want to be a landlord because I don't want to, clean toilets and fix broken property and deal with bad tenants. What I can tell you is if you have a property manager and you're paying that property manager 3 to 5% for a larger multifamily property, or somewhere between, call it 5 to 10% for a single family residence, that person will handle those things for you and you'll pay the associated cost. And if you did your job and you did good due diligence buying a property, those things shouldn't break down that frequently, particularly if you're reinvesting in the property for your long-term ownership. Understand that owning real estate also has benefits that nobody really talks about, because a lot of people don't own real estate in the investment capacity. You get the amortization, you get depreciation, you get the interest deduction as well, plus you get the expenses that write off against your income. And while one property making $500 or $800 a door a month for you doesn't sound like a lot if you buy one home, if you start buying more complex multifamily properties and start building up a larger portfolio, you're making thousands of dollars a month. and you also have equity appreciation. One of the things I've said in videos multiple times was that in this particular economy, over the last year, the average equity in a single family residence, a home, has increased by over 29% across the country. That is a huge leap. And if you were a real estate owner, you get the benefit of your net worth increasing by that much because of your ownership in real estate. Whereas a flipper, they're not getting that. They're buying properties in that market and they're selling properties in that market once they're done rehabbing it. An Airbnb arbitrage person, they don't get at all any benefit from that. All they're doing is the rental rates. They get the rental rates for the occupancy during holidays and weekends and things of that nature, but they don't get any of that upside potential. Long-term wealth comes from owning the real estate, reducing your tax basis by the passive income that you can, and continuing to buy more and more real estate over time, building your empire. One of the things I'll tell you is when the economy shifts, a lot of these things go away, but real estate ownership doesn't. And while rental rates may go down and they may go up, owning real estate, if properly margined collateral, meaning that you don't have a crazy loan on it and there's not super high leverage and you go into it with no more than 70-75% LTV, depending on what market you're in. In California, it's probably going to be less than that because some areas like California have very expensive land values. What you get is you get cash flow that'll withstand any economic situation that can be thrown at it. I know a lot of landlords that suffered during the pandemic and had 1, 2, or 3 tenants that didn't pay, maybe even more, maybe even less. But the ones that had properly margined collateral that wasn't over leveraged, still had enough money coming in every single month to pay their mortgage and to put money in their pocket. And that is the difference between somebody who's wealthy and somebody who's rich. A rich person can lose the money. A wealthy person continues to make money despite the recessionary pressures. You have to understand that there is a difference between having emotional and financial peace of mind. You can be financially stable and comfortable, but a wealthy person also has an emotional comfort level, knowing that regardless of the volatility in the economy, they'll be able to shift and control their portfolio and their income accordingly. The other way wealthy people do this is not only by managing their income, it's also by managing their expenses. Rich people have a tendency to spend a lot of what they get on things that show other people that they're rich, while wealthy people don't have a tendency to do that. So you'll find that very, very wealthy real estate investors keep their cost of living low. And I don't just say this not living that lifestyle. For the first 12 years I was real estate investing, I lived in a 580 square foot apartment. I believe at the time I was renting for $1,486 a month. And by the time I left, it was $1,600 a month. And the reason why I ultimately left and bought a property was I recognized that I could buy a property for less than my rent with the mortgage payment, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And because I knew that that economic paradigm had shifted, that was the next step for me in my personal life. And even today, when I could afford a multi-million-dollar home, I choose to live a much more frugal life. My mortgage on this property is entirely covered by my rental property. As a matter of fact, all of my living expenses are covered by my rental property, and my salary, my wages from my job, everything else that I make and I earn is literally money that I can spend anywhere my wife and I want to or need to. And that is usually to reinvest back into real estate, because that's what wealth is. It's not spending and living lavishly. It's spending and building and continuing to build and continuing to build. Reinvest your money that you make from flipping, from Airbnb arbitrage, from selling real estate back into owning real estate. And that is how you will be wealthy. And that is how you will never have to worry about money the same way. And that will give you the emotional clarity and the emotional peace of mind to match your financial peace of mind. And that is true financial independence. Short, easy lesson for this week. Feel free to hit me up in the comments with questions. I love to answer the detailed stuff. If you're a real estate person or you want to know about financing, I'm happy to break down details. I've seen a lot of it. Like, comment, subscribe, send to your friends. We'll see you next time.